Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Just Ask Julia. My name is Liz Helton, and I will actually be piloting our presentation today on a topic that I know everybody is itching to talk about is AI and our job search. Now, when I first built this out, over the last month, I've been thinking about what I wanted to talk about. This is a topic that I knew was going to be heard of. We did this last year and we talked mostly about prompting. And so this year I want to talk about a little bit more about what's in our control and what is out of our control when it comes to AI and our job search. So for today, for our Just Ask Julia, we are going to talk about the usual tips, tricks, insights to help you advance your job search. In our focus today, we are going to be focusing on what's happening with AI right now. There's just been a huge study released out of Stanford that we're going to talk a lot about that Julia and I, quite frankly, stumbled upon at the 11th hour last night and dove headfirst into trying to understand what this all means and how it's going to impact you, the job seeker. Secondly, we're going to be framing that around the what's out of your control, right? A lot of that report talks about what is happening on the other side of the desk, and it lifts a curtain and a veil to a lot of things that we hear from you all the time asking about what is going on the recruiter side. How are they using AI? This is what we're gonna focus on. And then we're gonna flip it around because some of that, let's be real, is quite scary. And we like to be proactive around here and to focus on the things that are within our control, right? So let's talk about what's happening, what of it is out of our control, and then how we can control it. My goal for today is to really focus on making sure that you're aware of how AI is impacting your job search. And then for those of you that are trying to utilize those tools, knowing how to use them really effectively. Now, we could take an entire session to talk about just combating how AI is being used by recruiters and all of that. And we probably will at some point expand on that as a topic. But for today, I really wanted to give kind of an industry update on what's happening and then build in more around what's happening with AI for you and how you're using it. Of course, we want to think about how you are getting away from AI and utilizing networking and the human element. We have a lot of videos on that, but for today, we're going to be really focused on the AI piece of it all. So let's get started, shall we? Let's be real. AI is running the hiring funnel right now. If you take a look at this timeline that I have at the top of my screen, you will see that from screening your resume all the way through pay and benchmarking, AI is used at almost every portion of your job search. You don't actually talk to a human until after your resume has been screened. You have potentially talked to a virtual recruiter through text schedules, building out what the funnel of what you're going to do in this process till you've taken assessments. Then you maybe talk to the real life human that you're going to be working with, who is also using AI for your interview, for really capturing everything down to your exact responses, to the cadence and tone of what you're responding with, your word choice, and utilizing those systems on the back end to manage a conversation, right? And then to determine pay and salary negotiation. It is being used in every single piece of it. It is 90% of companies are incorporating it into somewhere. And here's the thing that we're about to get into is that 60% of Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies are using the same back end automated tools. It's HireVue is the big one, but I believe it's 2 or 3 top tools that are being implemented into Workday, into the back end that they're using. And you have no visibility into this. So I don't mean to have like lightning crashing doom sounds around this. I'm going to share a little bit about what that actually means. But 60% of the big companies that are hiring right now, Fortune 100s, are using the same automated screening system. And so what does that mean? Well, a Stanford research report just came out that surveyed 4 million. It's a giant number. This is not a small, it's 4 million applications. Found a couple of things. First, that just a few vendors, like I said before, just a few vendors are controlling the market. One algorithm is being used to shape your chances across all of these employers. So you end up having an account, a profile within HireVue or one of the others that are being used that is collecting the data of you, right? And in a lot of cases, that information is being stored and used again and again and again, right? So if you take an assessment, it may be used for not just that one application that you take it for, but across all of the applications that are using that system. And right now, because we have no regulations in AI, we are truly in the Wild West era. We, the consumer, don't have a lot of visibility into what data of ours and information of ours is being used to assess our candidacy. And what that resulted in this study is that 4% of those applicants, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but the odds of this being a coincidence are not great. 4% of applicants that applied to the same 10 jobs were rejected by all 10, which this study is amounting to algorithmic blackball, right? It could just be this one algorithm that is rejecting based on some element of those applications, right? There's still a lot of mystery in this, but the data is really showing that this neutrality that AI promises in hiring is not actually there. Because as we see when we generate our own AI, is that it starts to learn, right? And it pulls from the data set that it has, and there's no nuance to it. So if it's taking this one case and spreading it across, it might not be your application that's the problem. Moreover, what the study showed is that your assessment scores can follow you for up to 11 months of the same score, which is wild when you think about how long the hiring timeline is, and that the average unemployment lasts, I believe it is 27 months right now. And that not 27 months. I'm going to correct that, and I will make sure I have a better stat for you by the end of this. But what's wild to see is that 11-month algorithmic blackball could be detrimental to a job search. As I said before, candidates don't know what is screening them, which tools being used, how are being scored, the same results are repeating across employers. Right now, we don't have a lot of visibility. Certain states are starting to develop that. I believe it is New York that is putting more implications into what you have to share in your job descriptions and what you're posting. So hopefully we're going to start seeing some control around this. Lastly, and probably the most, to say it bluntly, horrific part of this is that these systems are not neutral. What this report found is that there are measurable racial disparities that exist at the job level with this. I believe it was over the surveyed 25% of Black applicants, and I believe it was something between 14 and 16% of Asian applicants had applied to jobs that were flagged as they didn't meet the federal requirements for just like good practices against discrimination, meaning that up to 40,000 or 400,000 of those applications, there was potentially racial discrimination against in this. And where that comes into play is that AI will maybe not ask about like gender or race or, those defining factors, but they will ask about zip code, right? And, education level. And I mean, it knows your name and things like, so it can make assumptions, right? And while not necessarily malintended, these are the ramifications that we are now seeing. So what the study showed is that if a human practice had had those same numbers, it would be absolutely flagged as discriminate practices, and there would be an investigation without a doubt. All is to say, this is not great news. This is what can we do about all of this, right? This is showing that there is a lot that is absolutely out of our control, more out of our control than we thought possible, right? So, what I want to focus on now is what can we do? Well, of course, we want to add the human element in, right? We want to be thinking about networking, and we talk a lot around here about utilizing your network for the human element, right? Getting out from behind the screen, talking to networking, talking to humans, going to events, getting introductions and referrals. Absolutely, more than ever, that is the most critical part. What we're going to focus on now, though, is how you can use AI as a strategist and not a shortcut, right? So let's get into it. 74% of job seekers are using AI in their job search. Okay, that's 3/4 of people are using AI in their job search. 88% of hiring managers say they can spot AI generated materials, whether that is from the tone that is used in a resume to the cadence of a cover letter to, you know, an overuse of M dashes, which honestly, I'm so sad about the death of an M dash because I, for one, love a good M dash and now feel like I can't use it because everybody will always insist that it is AI generated. That being said, it's more than that. Quick story. This would have been I guess about a year and a half ago. We were looking to hire an intern. And so we had put out in a job description. And in that job description, we had asked for a couple different things in a cover letter. And what was so funny is that of the responses we got back, a giant percentage of the candidates' cover letters looked almost identical. And sure enough, if you put, here is my resume, here is the job description, write me a cover letter, it was going to pop out that same response, almost identical. So you could almost tell, okay, who was using ChatGPT on this and who actually put some thought into it. So yeah, I fully believe that 88% of hiring managers who are in it over and over and over again and reading applications day in and day out can spot AI generated materials. However, AI generated materials are not the thing that is going to knock you out, right? It is a lack of personalization, right? 62% say that they are going to reject AI applications, not a hard stop, that lack personalization. It is critical that we know how to prompt really well and how to use these tools to our advantage because quite frankly, we have to be using them right now. It is imperative that we understand the tools that are quite frankly being used on the other side. And yeah, it can feel a little bit like robots talking to robots, and I hope to see an evolution in how this functions, but there is absolutely no reason that we shouldn't be using these tools when, quite frankly, it's almost impossible to like combat the volume and it's just the volume of candidates, the volume of applications you need to do. It's a wildly impressive tool when used, responsibly. But in reality, the tool that everyone is using is also the reason that nobody's getting noticed. So let's get into it. I want to understand the different types of tools that are out there right now. So we've got your conversational AI, the large language models. These are the broadest tools. So ChatGPT, our personal favorite Claude, Gemini, and Copilot. These are the best for writing and tailoring and brainstorming, interview prep. So this is the best kind of like if you're looking for a one-stop shop, this is going to be kind of the best of all worlds. However, do remember that there is no live data when you use these. It needs to input your data, or it is pulling when you're asking it to research, it's pulling from a moment in time, whenever that last update was, right? It is not pulling from what's the latest article, the latest insight, the latest best practice. So you need to give it that information for it to know. Otherwise, it's going to be pulling from probably some pretty outdated insight. The second type are the research AIs, right? So Perplexity and U.com are both incredible tools. Perplexity actually is one of my favorite when I'm trying to like dig into a topic. It has live intel. It's better for understanding industry news, real-time research. It is less useful when writing and doing creative content. So it won't build a deck for you. It is not the tool I would use to build a resume per se. However, it is what I would recommend to use to say, hey, break down this job description or give me some data on this company. Or to, have it kind of analyze something. What I really love, Perplexity is the one I've been playing with the most, is that it's significantly better about kind of asking questions around, well, what are you using this research for? Which I really appreciate. So then it can put some context into it. The third type are the job search platforms, right? These are the AI tools that have been built into specific, whether it's job boards or, these are things that are going to be there to help you build from a job search perspective. So their AI brain, if you will, is really focused on job search practices, right? So this is best for kind of understanding your ATS score. Although, goodness, as a resume writer, I can tell you the tailspin that one can go down by putting their resume into JobScan. It can be inflexible, right? However, I do know Teal is people have a lot of success with Teal. Teal is also I know it has some project management features for job seekers that is really great. These tools are meant to help you decode what is going on in a job description. It's not always perfect. I do know it has gotten better. But you've got to be a human element in it too, and to have some like, okay, this is my score based on the exact words that are in the job description and the exact words that are in the resume. So they're good to kind of do some gut checking with, but also keep your human eye available to them. And then of course, the like platform native specialists. So LinkedIn just launched in the last like 6 months, the 360 Brew platform, which is its new algorithm. And they do have some generative AI features in there for developing content, particularly if you're a premium member. Udly, as well as Copilot, are also tools that have started to incorporate AI into their systems. These are great for, if you're doing quick drafts, or if you're trying to do some practice for interviews, resume editing, but they're pretty generic, right? They don't have big brains. They're really just taking the general information that is in front of you, and they can be from a content development standpoint, there are significantly better options. Where it's going to most impact you, I would say, is in LinkedIn, is really the navigation of how you're maneuvering through LinkedIn from an algorithmic standpoint. An entire presentation on its own. Julia actually did one of these sessions specifically on the new LinkedIn algorithm. It might have been, was it last month or was it 3 months ago? I don't remember. It's been pretty recent this year. So she does have a presentation on that. You can go check that out on our YouTube. So here's the problem. Most job seekers that are AI skeptical are falling into two camps. Either camp one of AI is just going to do it for me. I'm going to here's my job description, here's my resume, build it out, right? And yeah, we're going to up our volume with that. We are going to send out 30, 50 applications a week. those applications are all going to sound exactly the same and exactly like absolutely everybody else's. And it will still feel like you're like falling into a void. Camp two is I don't even want to use it. It sounds terrible. It sounds like camp. Like that camp one is the reason I am not gonna use this, right? Try it. I tried it once. It sounded terrible. Um, or I'm spending three times as long rewriting everything, and it's taking me just as long to do everything. And and I'm not getting ahead. So what really is the point, right? We want to create a system that is going to get a better output, save you some time, and feel like you actually have a partner of sorts in in the job search process, right? A virtual assistant, if you will. So let's talk about how you can do that, right? So some habits that might be costing you in your AI usage. It's submitting and or clicking and submitting, right? Spraying and praying. I need you to be rewriting at least, at the very, very least, you need to be looking over every single sentence. But if you're not taking a look at that summary statement at the top of your resume, at the very least, what are we, there's no point. We need to absolutely be using our human eyes, right? And you need to be editing from start to finish, right? Second, feeling like you have to start every single conversation from scratch, right? Like you have to start and say, I want you to be this. Here is who I am. Here's the job description. That is an initial prompt, but what a huge number of people are not utilizing are project features in tools like ChatGPT and Claude. Now, what projects do is they kind of create like a data bank of instructions where you can have a set number of instructions and background to kind of get the AI brain going, right? So it has a starting point. It's the universal information that will always, always, always be true. One thing that a lot of job seekers I've worked with do is they have a job search project for each type of role that they're pursuing, right? And then you can start within that, you can start a new file for each application. So you can have a different chat going for each application that you're doing under a project that has the same brain, right? So it's going to learn the constraints that you want. It's going to learn what you know, the points that you want to say, the things that you say, please never ever use the word actually again. Um, please, you know, take out 80% of the M dashes in here. You know, whatever your constraints are, it'll start to know these things. It will also say, hey, I want to focus on my P&L ownership. I want to make sure that when I'm like my personal brand is inserted and it touches on these 3 points, right? Versus having to start that from scratch over and over and over again. So those project features can be really helpful in creating that data bank for you. This is not a quantity practice, right? We are going over for quality over quantity still. Now, before we started using AI in our practices, we would tell people all the time, like, you know, you do not need to send out 30 applications a week. Or people would say, hey, what's the right number to send out? That rule has not changed for us because we've added these tools into our job search practices and recommendations. We will absolutely be focusing on how you're using this to tailor and to support rather than to just rapid fire get more applications out, right? From if I'm going to be really honest, when I write a resume and I'm using AI as support, it still takes me just as long from start to finish to get through a first draft. Now, am I doing fewer drafts? Sure, because I do believe that the quality of a first draft is now significantly better because I'm not as focused on did I remember that Oxford comma everywhere or did I exclude it or you know like I can focus more on having a tool and a partner to break down and understand what are we focusing on, is this the right tone for this executive? Is this aligning with this type of job much faster? But it is literally going through every single bullet, every single line, and talking it out, right? But that still will take time, right? It's about the quality, not the quantity. Um, Utilizing just one tool for all of your research and feeling like it's enough. I like to have my systems talk to each other. Perplexity all day long for the research, but then I'm going to take that over into Claude and say, hey, this is what I'm noticing. This is what I'm seeing. Here are the bullet points that I have created that I want to focus on. Let's start to put together a draft, right? We need to cross check and make sure that everything's talking to each other. And also remember that if you don't feed it the information, AI loves to make up information. It loves to hypothesize. It wants to fill in the cracks. No, we don't need a virtual street that's lined with all those little, squiggles. We want something that is truly authentically real and that doesn't just try to like smooth things over, right? Let's really try to build it out then rather than just like patch a hole. So why do you sound like a robot, right? We want to build an evidence bank, right? So I actually really, we're going to talk about this in a second, but I'm a really big proponent of having AI interview you first. So you want to give it writing samples and evidence to help it not sound robotic and to help it actually sound like you a little bit more, right? We want to give as much of our own voice as possible. Having AI interview you and ask questions can be great. One of the practices that we do when I'm working with writing clients is I will give them a worksheet, a form to fill out, but then we have a full 90-minute conversation where we talk through the ins and outs of their career. And we just hit record and we're then capturing a full data set of a voice, right? That you can't replicate the way somebody tells their story by just answering a couple of questions, right? And so with what I recommend doing is talking it out, having conversation. I personally am a big proponent of hitting the talk to text feature because that's going to help capture more of the way you speak rather than agonizing over every single word that you type. It keeps using the same phrases. I struggle with this one too. What AI loves certain phrases. Claude, as an example, loves the word actually. It actually does this. You want to put some constraints in there. And in your projects, you can say, like, let's take out the jargon, let's take out the passive voice, let's make it results oriented first, right? And taking out just the generic phrasing. And as I said before, it makes things up. We want to start with the more information you feed it, the less it's going to try and hypothesize. But one of the constraints I always, always, always prompt with is no hypotheticals. If you have a question, ask me. Do not create something that is hypothetical. So what can go into your evidence bank? I like to answer these questions. What did I do? What was the impact? So numbers, time saved, team size, etc. What tools did you use? Software, platforms, methodologies. Here's a good one. What would have broken without me, right? I want you to think about like, what's the impact that you had? Sharing these kind of questions, these responses to these questions are going to help you build your bank up. And of course, what are you most proud of, right? These are the type of things that are going to make for a great resume, great responses to, interviews as you start to draft what you want your anchor point stories to be, as an example. And then how to use it. So let's start with the insight. Don't even open up an AI until you have answered these questions, right? Until you have a data set of your own. Then you take that data set and you plug it in, right? never inventing. So the more you have, the more you're going to be able to have more information that's going to be available to you. And then keep it updated. We always say, you should be updating your resume every, 6 to 8 months with what's been going on, right? Because that cadence of time is going to show completed projects. It's going to stay fresh. Even just having a rolling list of things that you've completed is going to make it significantly easier when it comes time to dive into the full scope of a job search to keep it updated over time. Okay. Um, this one, so teaching the AI your voice, some outputs are going to sound like you, others are going to sound like anybody else. What I really want to um make sure that you're doing is calibrating to get your voice. So this is a great kind of 5 minute. If you do this in 5 minutes, it's going to improve your output, right? So the more kind of cover like things that writing samples, things that you have felt good about, tone, pasting those examples in is going to help you land the tone a little bit better. But give instruction. Study the tone, the structure, the word choices in these examples. This is how I communicate. Match this voice in everything you draft for me. And that I guarantee you is going to help calibrate your systems a little bit better. And it's going to take some time. It's going to take conversations over time. But if you do this 5 minutes, it takes 5 minutes to just upload some examples of some good writing, right? Some things that you're really proud of. And then it can start to help you kind of have to avoid, or sorry, it helps you to avoid having to recreate the wheel. Um, Strategic prompt. It should have 5 components. The role, right? What the AI needs to do. Act as a recruiter reviewing applications for context, your evidence bank. Task, rewrite these 3 bullets and mirror the language, the limits that we talked about, and then matching the voice, right? So role, context, task, limits, and voice. Every component you add narrows the gap between what AI produces and what you actually need. Because I promise if you just put, hey, write me a cover letter for this job, you're going to get, I'm excited to apply for X position. I saw the posting and was instantly drawn to the company. I have a background in blank, blank, and blank. Thank you for your interest. I look forward to hearing from you. Blech. Nope, we want to go deeper than that. And that simply does not happen unless you use these 5 components. So lastly, if you just are looking for a quick, like, hey, what tool to use for what um, part of your job search, here's a quick list. For job postings and research, Perplexity is a fantastic decoder. Um, what's the real, you can, decode, use kind of the job, think about job descriptions and prompting around reading between the lines. What is the real problem that the company is solving, and what will the company ask? We have a job description decoder exercise that we do that highlights the different levels of experience that you have. I would check that out. That we definitely have a previous video of that up on our YouTube, but the job description color coding exercise can be great to plop into a Perplexity feed and to start breaking down based on the information that you have about the job and your background, right? So trying to understand what's going on in a job description. For networking and outreach, look, Claude and ChatGPT are fantastic tools for maintaining like understanding of the types of things that you want to say. With those project features, they're really fantastic. So they also have the best cadence for content for writing in voice. I would argue that Claude has a significantly better one. The same goes with recruiters. writing your recruiter pitches, helping you to sharpen your tools. The general generative AI is going to be great. Target company lists, researching what companies are doing what. Perplexity is a great tool for that. And then, of course, LinkedIn. LinkedIn's AI is, again, an entire section that I need you to go back and watch that video, because there's a lot happening on LinkedIn right now that we need to be paying attention to. But for content development on LinkedIn, I truly, I do like Claude for that. So that's it for today. I know this was a meaty presentation with so much to think about in terms of how AI is being used and how you can use it. My name is Liz Helton. This was the June edition of Just Ask Julia. If you are watching live, we are going to open up to the Q&A. If you are watching the replay, you can go into the show notes and sign up for a future session. We do this the first Friday of every month. It's absolutely free and open to all. Thank you so much for joining us today, and let's get into it.